the report of the Hardware and IoT startup ecosystem. The report was done together with Siemens for startups as part of their commitment to support this amazing vertical of hardware and IoT. Some of the most interesting startups in the world are in this vertical. And yeah, we really recommend you to download it. It's a free report available for everyone. It's showing you who is winning, which cities are doing well, which countries are doing well, what is going on with the industry in general. So it's a really fun report. We had a lot of fun preparing it. And again, it's a fascinating industry, and I think we're very lucky to have a lot of stakeholders, including Siemens, that are here to support startups and help them succeed. Hardware is a difficult vertical. We always joke that it has the word hard in it to start. But then again, it's such a beautiful vertical that really makes a lot of change in the world. So yeah, that's great. I'm really looking forward to today. We're going to have a really interesting panel to discuss about the industry. And yeah, I'm going to turn it to Shangul, our marketing manager. Thank you, Shangul.
Thank you, Ali. Thank you. Really excited to present the result. So I'll keep it very short. Let me share my screen. And my goal is to just run you through the report and show you some of our key findings. Let me see if you can see my screen. Okay, that's great. So first of all, before diving into the deep of anything, I would like to tell that this report is very similar to the report that most of you know us, Global Startup Ecosystem Index. But here we isolated the hardware and IoT results from the Global Startup Ecosystem Index, and it measures the activity on hardware and IoT startup activity level. So you will find a very detailed methodology towards the end of the report. So if you're curious about what we exactly measured and what are the parameters and so on, feel free to refer to this page. But I will run you through the report. So first of all, we have an opening, a foreword, if you would like to read it. And then through the report, you will see that we have a page that will give you a very brief overview of the results that we find. These are the most interesting findings we have. So even before diving into the report, I really suggest you take a look at this part. And then we have an industry analysis, which looks at the industry from a macro perspective. If you go deep into this page, you will see that we have some interesting findings, like 7% of startups globally are from the hardware. So this pretty much supports what Eli said, hardware is hard. But then there are other interesting insights on funding, on how startups change throughout the years, the number of startups, on unicorns, and so on. So if you would like to take a look at the macro level of industry, this section is quite helpful. Then we have a regional analysis, which looks at the geographies from a macro perspective. One of the charts that I really liked here was on the countries that are showing us only 4 countries are bringing us the 80% of global hardware and IoT funding. So in this geographic section on regions, you can find more about the results like this. If we scroll a bit more, we have the most known thing for StartupBlink, the ecosystem rankings. We have 2 sets of rankings. One is for countries and other is for cities. On country level, the rankings are adjusted per capita, and we see US as the main leader as usual, but we have some interesting countries appearing at the top due to their unique strengths, like Taiwan is ranked second here. So I will leave it to you to read the rest of the results and take a look at how different countries are performing. And similarly for cities, we have a similar set of rankings. This part is not adjusted for population. So if you look at it, you will see that we have lots of Chinese cities appearing this year, with Shanghai having a very good year. It is now the 2nd ranked city. And interestingly enough, London is the only European city that is appearing in the top 15. So all those kind of insights are covered within the top cities section. the city analysis. And the rest of the report includes an analysis on corporate startup activity, which is another index of StartupBlink, looking at how corporates are engaging with startups. Here you can again see the top corporates supporting hardware startups, Intel, Qualcomm. We also see Siemens here, and also their interesting corporate programs and venture arms. So the rest of the report, we provided you some of the top startups per country, and you can also take a look at the different stakeholders from different niches like events and also from accelerators and programs like this. But at this part, as I promised, I will keep it very short. And I would like to invite Susan Kunz from Siemens to also give a very short speech about this report and what it means for them. So if we can promote Susan as the panelist, that will be great. Hello,
Okay,
Susan.
getting ready. Thank you. Thanks for having me and also the other panelists. So I'm really happy that today is launch day. And I'm thinking, as Ellie mentioned, hardware is hard, but it's also close to our hearts. So that's maybe another game. And just to briefly introduce myself, I'm part of Siemens for Startups, being responsible for a startup program which is called Solid Edge for Startups. It's a global program, and it's dedicated to hardware startups specifically. And that's why I'm so honored, that we are being able to publish these insights together with you today, because I'm thinking it's quite valuable, for the whole ecosystem in general to have some stats and insights that focus on the hardware section. That was what I'm always was looking for. Because I think providing some details about this ecosystem is very important for everyone, not only for corporates like Siemens, but also for startups themselves and also for venture capitals. Yeah, so what comes next, Andrew?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Susan. So I will invite our Chief Operating Officer, Lisa, who is also the person moderating the panel, to say hi. And in the meantime, we will promote our other panelists to the audience so we can start the panel.
Great. Thank you, Shengul.
For the time being, if our panelists can raise their hands so we can quickly promote them, that will be even better.
I think we're waiting on, oh, there she is, there's Sarah. Okay, great. Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Shengul. And I wanted to,
Alan
yeah,
is also joining from
I think it's,
panel.
yeah.
Yep, I'll leave it to you, Sam.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Shengul. Welcome, everybody. And we're really privileged to have such a stellar panel to discuss hardware at our launch today with Siemens. I'd like to just briefly introduce everybody and then we'll get started. So you've just met Susan from Siemens, and so privileged to be working with you, Susan. Also joining us is Alan Adojan, CEO of Yanu, which is a robot bartender serving drinks, handling payments, and communicating with clients. So that's amazing. Sarah Elgerman, who is a mechanical engineer, deep tech operator, and innovation strategist. She's the founder of Pratic, which supports hard tech startups to scale their systems and companies. I hope that That's completed. Yep. Feel free to add anything else once I've introduced you, obviously. And finally, we have Max Ashmedchen, who is the head of the business plan Munich and startup advisor at Bay Startup, which is the Bavarian startup network of founders, investors, and industrial players. So wanted to welcome you all and thank you so much for joining us. Today's topic, hi.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Max. I'll just introduce today's topic, which is the future of hardware and IoT startup scene. To begin with, to warm us up, this is a question for everybody, and I'll start with you, Susan, if that's okay.
Yeah.
To start off, we'll discuss how each of you view the current state of hardware startups today. So baseline question, and we can go from there.
Yeah, I'm thinking for hardware startups specifically, it's now maybe easier to prototype, to develop digital MVPs. I think also corporates are in place, like, you know, Siemens, to engage with startups, specifically with hardware startups, to bring them on the right way, to support them, in our case, with free software, maybe even with free hardware from Siemens. So I'm thinking, you know, hardware startups are in a good shape, no matter, you know, considering this. I think it's also, you know, maybe harder to scale, thinking of venture capital companies that also want to see more quickly results. So I'm thinking there are, you know, maybe programs that enable an easier access, but as well, you know, maybe harder requirements to get capital.
I have to
Great.
agree.
Okay, that's good.
Shall I
maybe
go on?
not. Yeah.
Yes, please.
Okay. So, well, there's a lot going on because of the new enabling technologies. First, second, of course, the big buzzword AI has created a lot of opportunities. In my field, definitely the development of sensors. So to put all this together, it gives a lot of new opportunities. At the same time, the focus has shifted very much to a specific verticals, dual use, or in other words, defense is booming, so all the money is going there. Medical, so there's some verticals that get a lot of attention, and the others are left aside. As we are in service robotics, that's kind of also favorite of the investors, but depends on which areas, right? And I think humanoids is something that will change the world and render many startups, ideas, and companies and inventions completely useless in the next years. I'm quite sure of that. And yeah, at the same time, I always say that, but funding-wise, startups are always left a bit behind compared to software companies. I just spoke to one big VC from USA who said that it's the worst investment climate in 15 years. And it has been so like for the last 2 years. And especially for the Europe, because most of the money is in US, and a lot of them are not allowed to invest outside US. And at the same time, when you're in Eastern Europe, they see you as a danger zone. I've been told straight that you guys are in a war zone. We can't invest there. So there's a lot of hurdles and obstacles that you have to come through or over if you want to develop a hardware today, I would say.
Yeah, that we'll touch on some of the challenges as well later on in the discussion, I'm sure. Might pass to Sarah. Thank you, Alan.
Sure thing. I mean, Alan covered it pretty well on the kind of investment, and I think it's also just the investment is shifting into different industries where a lot of impact climate is getting less of a center stage as it used to. And I think that that's In a way, pushing startups in a strategic alliance with commercialization, because no longer are people comfortable investing in kind of that green premium that we used to be able to. I'm kind of upset about it in the sense of that there is a premium to begin with, and then you kind of hit your ground running, and then it becomes commercially viable. Most hardware startups have that like initial investment where things are very expensive and more expensive, and then they kind of even out through time. So that's a little bit needed. So I'm personally being an advocate for hardware startups. I'm frustrated with the investment kind of culture and how that shifts so drastically in these environments. But I think that there's also a kind of breed of founder that's becoming like relentless and incredibly just like increased in gumption to be able to pursue hardware and be incredibly passionate about it. I not to do a personal plug, but one of the things that I see in the current hardware ecosystem is that mistakes get repeated because they're not talked about, and there's like a decent amount of knowledge gap in the hardware industry. This is why I have my podcast. It's called The Builder Circle, and it's to be able to democratize knowledge around hardware, supply chain, manufacturing, these kind of hurdles that every single startup struggles with. And it was developed out of understanding the failure modes of startups through the past 10 years, but then also making it very super relevant to current stage challenges. So I think that people talking about their stories and hardware startups kind of being a part of ecosystems like StartupBlink, I think is very valuable in the current stage of hardware.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, you've brought up a range of things, especially the knowledge gap is a really interesting one. And turning now from the accelerator sort of perspective from Bavaria, maybe we can pass to Max and touch on some of Sarah's points.
It's difficult to say. Maybe at first I should explain my view. So at BuySide, we bring together investors with startups in a pre-seed seed stage, but also what I'm doing is a lot of competitions. So we are focused on business plan competitions. So that's why we're seeing very early stage startups. It's like before they founded a company, or the latest stage is seed. So in the very early beginnings of a startup, and also of a hardware startup. So I don't have the insight from the inside of a hardware startup, but what I'm seeing is a trend that more and more founders and students want to start a hardware startup. Of course, they will see the challenges of Alan and Sarah maybe in the later stage. But what I can see from the view of BuyStartup and from the view of the business plan competitions is that there's more and more interest from young founders to really starting a company, especially in the fields like health tech, defense, robotics, energy. So that's something that we are seeing.
Yeah, and I can only confirm this perspective, taking a look at your demo nights, Max. I've seen so many, I think 90% of the startups presenting where at least, there were a hardware component included. And I see this as well. I'm now participating in stage 2. It's a Berlin startup event. And within the last 5 years, there had been a really clear shift towards hardware, what I'm seeing, at least for Germany, or for Europe.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm very sad to see that Germany falls from the 4th to the 10th place. But I think we have a lot of potential here. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks, Max. We'll move on to that kind of foundation, to looking a little bit more specifically at how the hardware sector has developed. And this is specifically for both Susan and Sarah from that macro view. How do you think, from your experience, the hardware sector has developed over the past 5 years? And also, looking ahead, what do you think some of that journey might be? What are your kind of insights looking ahead as well?
Sarah, I think I will keep it short and simple because you are probably working also together with many amazing startups. I'm thinking AI has become really a very success criteria for most of the startups. I'm thinking also, you know, when it comes again to success criteria, I think the winners will probably be those who treat hardware, software, and data as a single continuous system. So where startups are bringing all of these components together and not only develop, you know, the hardware component of their product. And also think of, you know, SaaS is a big deal for Siemens, and also thinking of models to use data in an ongoing way, not just selling the product once, but also thinking of using the data afterwards. That was a bit longer than expected, Sarah.
No, I think that's a very astute observation. I think I'll answer like the first part of the question where it's looking back in the past 5 years. I actually agree with Max that there has been a definite increase in interest in hardware more so than ever. And I think it is kind of coming down from like a few reasons. One being that our physical world needs physical solutions. I mean, in the shortest kind of most I guess condensed manner, I think that's one of the reasons. I think secondly, with the increase of AI, there's a little bit less, the kind of SaaS world has been shifting. I'm not saying that it's disappearing, but there's been an immense shift where the competitive edge of software products has become much more difficult to achieve. And I think that having almost like hardware that has a competitive edge is an incomparable moat. Because when you have a hardware product that works better than incumbent solutions or your competitors, you have a lead time that's kind of with you. Everyone says hardware is hard, it takes a long time, but the benefit of it is that if someone's trying to copy you, it's going to take them a long time too. So if you're ahead of the game, you're ahead of the game in a way, unless someone figures out a very quick way to manufacture, which that obviously is always something that and kind of skill set is very important. But I have kind of seen this like interesting like industry dynamic shifts and founder perspective shifts throughout the past 5 years and more interest in hardware. We have these hardware meetups that we host all around the world. I've hosted ones in Boston and London, and it's just gotten more crowded. We have around, I think, 40,000 members now globally, and it's been like a total grassroots effort that came out of San Francisco that spread. So like the ecosystem is growing rapidly. And when looking at the next 5 years, Susan, I'm giving a longer answer than you are, I apologize. But when looking at the next 5 years, I completely agree with Susan, is that what I would like to see, and I think that's going to happen naturally, is we're not going to have these just like equipment manufacturing or I'm in industrial tech and like digital tech, so I will give kind of examples of both. But I think that we'll see a lot more companies that are adopting this like kind of intelligence angle, and like data is power now. So not just creating IoT devices, not just creating equipment or physical products, but also really having this like metacognition around what data is useful for this industry, what data have we not been able to tap into, what patterns matter, and what have we not had access to. Now we have AI and AI like things that can help us determine and better understand industries. So like I think that there's going to be a rapid shift of priorities that don't just center around physical assets.
Yeah. Maybe I back this up with a brief story, because this has been so far quite theoretical. I've been working together with a startup based in France, and they are developing paddleboard rental stations, and they are working together with a paddleboard manufacturer, because you know the paddleboard manufacturer just sold the paddleboards and then they are gone. And now through those paddleboard rental stations, they are able to collect data. And by the way, also established companies like in this case Tahe and Playa Rent are working together. So established big companies are working together with startup founders, which is another angle, right? So just briefly to back up this story.
It's a very holistic view, I think, 100%. And I I wanted to kind of drill down on a specific location with Max in Bavaria. So we've heard about looking back, looking forward, but also specifically Max in from an accelerator standpoint, where would you say your ecosystem is headed, and what kind of developments are you anticipating in the coming years, knowing that we've got that kind of setting from Susan and Sarah?
Yeah, of course, it's difficult to say, but as Susan said, we also see a big increase in cooperations between startups and big-sized companies like Siemens, but also the German economy is defined by mid-sized companies. We have, especially in Bavaria, a lot of mid-sized companies that are hidden champions that are all producing hardware right now. And I think we're also seeing the shift that they are interested to invest in startups and work together in startups. And I think that will only grow these kind of cooperations, not only with Siemens, of course, that's very important, but also with the mid-sized companies. Yeah, and maybe I can also back it up with the perspective that we are having from the business angels, because ByStartup has a network of over 400 business angels that are also investing in different kind of companies. But what we are seeing here, that like in the last 5 years, the main interest from business angels was software as a service, of course. Then in the last 2 to 3 years, it was fully on AI. But now, what I'm seeing from my point of view, a lot of investors are very careful about investing also in AI startups, because you can't see how this scene will develop. And that's why I think a lot of them are also looking again at hardware startups, because if you have some patents, if you have IP and innovation in your product, that's also kind of a security for your investment.
Yeah, that actually leads really well. Thank you, Max. It leads really well to the next kind of theme, which is looking at challenges. We've all kind of touched on them. I might start with Alan in this case, and then throw to Sarah and back to you, Max. So we've mentioned some of the challenges such as investment and the sharing of knowledge. Also looking at what you just mentioned, Max, about the appetite of investors to look at hardware seriously and not get distracted by AI, for example. Alan, what would you say are the biggest challenges for hardware startups today? Maybe it's cost, maybe it's talent, something like that, but especially compared to software startups.
Yes,
Thank you.
I would see maybe 5 main things that I've encountered. There's definitely more, but for me, the hardest thing has been getting out of the pre-seed or seed phase, because in the beginning, you have an idea. Most of the people don't believe it, especially in our case, and you have to, prove. You have to build. You have to test. So getting out of this phase. Funding wise and also team wise, maybe was the hardest thing to do, because nobody wants to invest in the development phase or before you are already on the market or with a MVP or earning something back. So the funding again comes up, because in our area in Estonia, the locals invest only to the big and proven companies, to Starship, to Bolt, to the guys who are making big funds already. Then everybody wants to get on the train, so to say. So they are looking for traction and turnover, and then you become attractive. Until that, you're just a developer who does something that is not working, and that's a huge problem actually, to convince people. Second or third is of course the scaling, because that's super capex heavy, and you have to decide how to do it. Will you do it gradually? Should you go for all the market? How many competitors do you have? How to scale, because if you're building something expensive like I am, then scaling is also difficult, and with the scaling comes the production. We've done everything by hand now. That makes the product very expensive to produce. So let's say half of the price is our production cost today. We need to get it much lower. And that brings up other questions: how to produce. Should I build up my own factory? Or today we're working in a small workshop and we're not able to produce like commercially. Or should we find a good partner? It raises next questions: where should the partner be? Who should the partner be? Finding a partner and outsourcing everything is kind of an easy way, because you give the drawings, you give the money, you give the orders, and that's it, right? But that makes the production even more expensive. At the same time, building a factory, hiring the people. So you have to weigh these things, which way to go. And it depends, of course, very much on the product and what you do and how you do. But still, that's today my biggest question, as we're out of the dev phase and we now need to decide how to produce and with whom. And considering Estonia, well, one of the big problems in hardware is finding people, because the big ones have bought everybody up. They are paying more. Cleveron even offers 4-day work week, so you can compete with these guys. And we have a secret sauce. I'm going to tell you about it a bit later, because there's a question about it.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, Alan. It's very much chartering the waters that have not been charted by the sounds of it, that you're doing. So I think Sarah's probably familiar with that and has met a lot of people like that. So I'll throw to you, Sarah. Thank you, Alan.
Of course. I mean, Alan did a pretty good kind of overview of all of the challenges. Maybe I can comment, because I don't want to repeat. So maybe I'll kind of give a little bit of the nuances of why, and just to kind of educate the wider ecosystem. If you don't know, maybe you all already are very aware of these challenges and trade-offs. But I think, like, specifically when it comes to production, one of the biggest reasons that hardware startups really struggle is obviously being cash strapped, having to do a large capex investment. But beyond that, some things that it might not be as straightforward or commonly known is that say you're getting materials, you're getting supplies. A lot of companies that sell these things have minimum order quantities. So if you're trying to do the onesies, twosies, or just 10 of something, you might not be able to go to the people that are actually like the best at it, because what they will say is the minimum order quantity, you have to buy 50,000 of these. And that's not something that a small company can do. Large companies can do that because they have the volume. Small companies, they're still trying to prove their technology. So that's not possible. So this could even be like a non-starter for some companies if they're specifically working with, I don't know, rare earth elements, or something that's very niche that is being produced by one person in the world, or like 2 people in the world, and they have minimum order quantities that are reachable. It could just kill the startup before it even begins. So just from like a supply chain standpoint. And then the next kind of nuanced thing is that as a startup, you obviously need to prove traction. There's a lot of different markets that you can usually go into. And the annoying thing is, in the very early stages, because you need to prove that traction, you're talking to a lot of people and getting a lot of mixed signals. So you're getting signals from one market that requires like maybe like a small version of your device, and then you have like another market that wants like a large version of your device, and you're like, which one do I make? Do I make both? They're all big names. And then also it's like that relationship is pretty warm, so I don't want to jeopardize that relationship. So maybe I say yes, but now my engineering team is really shot and we haven't even proved the thing, and we want to prove the thing and then learn from it and then redo it again, and we don't have time for that. So like these are like super interesting nuanced cases where for maybe a larger company, this is great. They usually can't keep up, like their sales can't keep up with their engineering and their product inventory. But for hardware startups, they're actually usually there's like 2 versions where they have like a market problem, which like if you have a market problem, you probably are very excited about a niche technology that no one really wants. You should really evaluate that. Or you have like a different instance where your market is like hungry for this and you've identified something great, but you are not fast enough to meet that demand. And your engineering team is just absolutely shot, and your business development team is overly excited and they need to calm down. So like it's this very interesting constant push and pull, and there's just a lot of stress. Like you'll see a lot of tension in all of these ports. And I don't know if you've like known the hardware triangle of death, where it's like quality, cost, time, and it never collapses on itself. So that is like one of the things is like you can't have all three, and you always have to make concessions on one. And I think that like summarizes the general challenges of our hardware. And then all of these like small nuances of why production is difficult, why like supply chain is difficult, and why designing for your early stage market is such a difficult task to be able to make these big decisions. And also there's really bad advice out there. And because investors, VCs hold such a power because they have the power of the purse strings, as we call it in the US, they tend to give pretty bad advice. Not all of them. I have very good VCs that I know as well, but there's also, they want you to keep raising money because that like churns their economy as well. So anyway, I digress, but I have a lot to say on this topic. Maybe we can all get together over beers and talk about it further.
I mean, maybe you guys have a beer and I just can't see it, but anyway.
I feel like we need to do another session, Sarah.
Yeah, that's always possible. I was just going to follow on from those deep insights from Sarah onto Max. I'm not sure if you have any specific things that you wanted to add to those challenges as well from your perspective.
To be honest, I agree totally with Sarah and Alan, and I think they've mentioned every big challenge, the funding for startups, of course, and the first steps to production, to serial production. Just last week, I talked with someone who has a mid-sized company and who is making the offer for startups to do the production for them. And when I talked to him, he said also that he does this not from a financial view, but from a view that he wants to help the next generation or next startups. Because from a financial point, it's of course always more interesting to work together with the big companies who have a big order and from whom you know that they will stay for the next 5 to 10 years. And with startups, they could die in the next 12 months. So especially when it comes to production, you need a lot of planning. And that's why it's not attractive to work together with startups. And that's why I think we need there to have more offerings for hardware startups, like being flexible, like helping them to set up a production line, and also, of course, to help with funding. And I think we have a great offering in Germany, in Bavaria, when it comes to grants. So we have a lot of grants also in Europe, but it's, of course, always difficult to find the right ones. And then, of course, finding the right partner to go on and set up a production line. Yeah, definitely.
And Max, I wanted to add another dimension to this, because I'm working also with, let's say, established SMBs together, which are our customers, of course, as well. And I'm seeing there, this is not applicable for all the companies, but, thinking of maybe running a business since 30 years, quite successfully. But, of course, there are shifts in, that you need to develop new products. So there is obviously also for these established companies a need for transformation, for innovation. And sometimes I really see that they struggle because what they are thinking is also never change the running system. We've been working quite successfully since 30 years with the same approach. But startups, hardware startups, could be a nice way to implement, to include innovation in such, established companies. And that's what we are also wanting to do with Buy Startup, bringing both angles, both sides together.
I would also add that especially in Bavaria, especially because we have such a focus of automotive, and automotive is right now in crisis. We have all the mid-sized companies that doing hardware for the sector, and everyone has right now capacities. But of course, for them, as you said, they always work together with the Audi and the BMWs, and now they have to change the system and really looking for startups and looking for the companies who will grow and scale in the next years.
Yeah.
Just picking up on that innovation aspect and some of the challenges, and I guess what Susan you're talking about is some of the being in the routine of using the same hardware, but actually there's newer solutions that need to be looked at and could significantly improve productivity and all of those sorts of things. I'll pass it actually back to Max and then on to Alan, if that's okay. Thinking about universities and research institutions and what your view is in partnerships with those sorts of organizations and how they can shape the next generation of hardware startups as well. Thanks. Alan, over to you.
Yeah, thanks.
And you're on mute.
Oh yeah, sorry, I thought Max was first. Universities, yes, that's my secret sauce, to be honest, because we haven't got so far without university, and we also have been super lean because of that. Our competitor has spent about 40 million to develop their product. They've got some bells and whistles that we don't have, but I would say that we're all kind of on the same level. We do some things better, faster, and so on. And the cost of that for us has been only 2.5 million, so like, I don't know, 20 times less. And the secret sauce is the university there, because from the day one, I walked to the local university and found a great team there. So most of the time, our team has been the university or the people from university. Investors don't look at this very fondly, because there's a bit of a doubt that we don't own these people and we don't control them fully, so to say. But at the same time, it has saved us a lot of money, and we've got state-of-art technology from there, something that others don't have or don't have access to. We have employed later several team members, I think even 5 people from the university, the guys who've gone to masters, finished their PhD, and then came to work for us. So that's a perfect place to harvest your team members. And then, of course, the help with IP. University always wants to grab a bit of it, but if you manage to negotiate, then they get the science part and you get the commercial part, and that's fine, absolutely, for us at least. Maybe in defense they don't want to do that, but we are very fine with it. And then, like Max mentioned, the grants has been for us a huge value. We have acquired quite a few of those, and that has helped us to create several things, move faster, be funded in some parts, and develop new tech, and also give back to the university through that. And all, yeah, investments maybe too, because the scientists also know people who invest. They go in different circles, they communicate around, they always boast about their actions, at least with Janu. I've noticed that whenever they go to a conference or somewhere, then they like to bring Janu up as an example, and maybe that's why Siemens also loves us. But yeah, there's a lot of value that you can harvest if you know how to play with them. Of course, there are a bit of downsides too. They are a bit slower. There's an overhead. There's a lot of paperwork and regulations. So it's, give or take. But I would always go to university if I have something cutting edge coming, or if there's an edge of science or scientific value. Thanks.
Yeah, I see totally the same way. As you said, Alan, I think university and research institutes are essential for the startup ecosystem and for hardware startups, because they are giving the resources to make these first steps. And I think we have a very good example in Munich with the TUM, with the Technische Universität München. But we're seeing the same development in other universities right now, like in the where they really are focusing or trying to bring out entrepreneurs out of the research. And I think that's a very good development. But we will see what will come, how many hardware startups will come out of this development.
And
I have
just
one thing
give
to
you,
add. Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
you go. I just wanted to mention briefly an event. I mentioned it briefly before. Stage 2, there are only startups associated which come out of universities. So you should definitely take a look. It's taking part in Berlin in October since 5 years now. So this is a event recommendation, and Siemens is also supporting this event. Sarah, back to you.
Oh, I was just going to, so I completely agree. There's so much support that's kind of flowing through in universities. So where I did my master's, Imperial College London, they have a huge kind of enterprise hub, and they're building an entire campus for startups in London. I completely agree and fully value what universities are doing. I will give a little bit of a hot take. Which is on the negative side of things, that I just have to mention as the reality, which Alan kind of alluded to, is that universities take equity, and they take equity, a large chunk of equity. For US universities, it usually ranges between 5 to 10. In the UK and Europe, I've heard anywhere from 15 to 20 to 25, which is insane. So I don't know who is watching and who's in the academic hemispheres. I think that there needs to be a reform to encourage more hardware and just any startup really to spin out of universities, because right now it's not really well incentivized, in my opinion. And I think that they need to have a tiered system where, for example, Alan has clearly really benefited from having university partners where they gave facilities, where they gave people, and all of that stuff, where maybe they really deserve that equity. If there were employees, you would give it to them. So that makes a ton of sense. But there's also some instances where someone finds it at the end of their master's program, but they used a PhD program, and they used their facilities for a month, and they go for their next and ask for equity, and then their cap table gets really tight, and it becomes really hard for that technology to really become commercialized because of that inherent they become equity poor. So one of the things that I would encourage institutions is come talk to me. I'll help you fix this. It just needs a tiered solution. I'm not saying you don't deserve any equity. I think that it needs to just be reasonable. And I think that right now it's actually counterproductive in some regions.
Strange. Our university refused of our equity. I would have given, because I didn't want to give so much money, but they were very much money hungry, I would say. So they chose money over equity. But it depends. I guess if you're a defense startup today, then they definitely want equity.
I see. Interesting.
Yeah.
I might just stay with you, Sarah, to start this question off, which is about the AI boom, and you touched on AI earlier, and the increasing utility of data and finding new ways to use data. The AI boom is reshaping many, if not all, industries. So what would you say it means for hardware startups if we double down on that?
Yeah, I think that it's going to come in waves. I feel like, I'm a mechanical engineer by trade, as you may know, but my peers are a little bit slower in integrating AI, I would say. I think we're very nuts and bolts and gears type of people. So thinking of AI agents is just not fun or exciting for us. But what I would say with that is, I think AI there are many people working on integrating AI into the hardware workflow, whether it's in computer-aided design or whether it's in supply chain management, or even in workflows that are related to production floors. So getting digital twins is like the very common. It's been the industry 4.0 big flashing lights for a while, and that's kind of gaining steam. So there's going to be different ways of being able to speed parts of hardware up. That I think that people need to kind of keep their eyes open. I haven't seen like very disruptive technologies that like everyone's using at the moment, but I see kind of small glimpses of it. There's a UK-based company called Monolith that what they're doing is, from what I understand, is if you're running tests, you can kind of have your test data given to them, and then they recognize patterns and then parameterize your tests so that you can almost like run synthetic tests, which is actually huge. If they can like really perfect that, that would make it so that these like really long test cycles with hardware and like a lot of prototypes that you need to get and like the equipment you need to use will become less and less. Like you could probably do some synthetic tests and then go back. So like that's one interesting one that I'm keeping my eye on. And so I think that it's going to be about integrating tools into, I'm looking at it from the hardware development standpoint. Obviously, there's going to also be a lot of hardware that's developed for the AI age, because I mean, the cooling systems for data centers, like the data centers themselves, and also the IoT devices to be able to harvest data, and so on and so forth. But like from the workflow perspective, I think that it's like a ripe part that a lot of people can basically fix a lot of issues within hardware for. So I think you just need the right people that understand software and hardware, and that's a little bit of a tricky combination to have.
Yeah, and thank you, Sarah. Speaking of software and hardware and AI, Susan, I'd love to get your read on the topic of AI.
Yeah, again, I wanted to give the stage to maybe 3 examples out of our startup program, which is, of course, Yanu, which is also using AI for their robot bartenders. Maybe Alan can speak about this in a few seconds. Then also Organifarms, it's a Germany-based startup. They are collecting strawberries, and they are also using AI with their sensors to detect if a strawberry is ready to harvest. And maybe another one, which is farming from Austria. So they are building farm equipment to really crop yields, monitor plant and soil health, and also enabling predicting if there is, a plant which does not belong to the field. And maybe the last one is Nextcube, which is a drone company from India. They are also using AI for their drones to operate monitoring and logistics. So just 3 examples of startups that have been using our software to build hardware, but as well benefiting from AI and, making their products more intelligent.
Okay, my turn, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, Sarah summed it up very well, actually. For us, it's always a question with AI is what to implement and how to implement, because there's a lot going on. There's the whole landscape is changing very fast, and it's quite impossible to navigate. I wake up every morning and I get so much new information on that, so many new tools. I don't have even time to just check them, So the other problem is that many of those tools are advertised as superb and over-promised, but actually are quite still useless or basic betas, or they don't do the job, or and you discover this after some time. And then there's a question whether to use big players to develop your stuff or create your own models. For instance, we planned a chatbot for Yano, and thank God we didn't buy it in for 100K from one company, because 2 years later the company bankrupted because there was no use anymore. ChatGPT did it much better. And then that was an idea that we create our own one that would have been even more expensive. So things are moving very fast. Then in hardware, I would say we are not in such a good position as software, of course, because coding can be done already with AI, but building hardware, not so much. Of course, there are tools. You mentioned digital twins before. We also designed one through one of the grants, and it has helped us immensely. And also some tools Siemens offers, but you have to navigate and you have to figure out what works and what not. I'm building right now another startup grants application, full service platform, and we have a dev team, great guys. They do AI magic there, and I couple of times asked, why don't you use vibe coding or whatever tools there are available, and they laugh and they say, it's crap. It's quite useless. You can create, but you can create actually is demos. If we build apps to the guys that are, or our clients, let's say, then we create a visual demo so they can see the screens that the app could look like. So it's useful for that, but real coding is still done by real people. They say that, yeah, it's coming. It's maybe in 1 year, maybe in 3 years that AI is able to do, perfect code that does everything needed. But we're still a bit far from that, I would say.
Just to give a quick shout out to my podcast again, next Tuesday, I'm actually releasing an episode on this topic, which is just AI and hardware. And my guest is Kristen Edwards. She did her PhD in AI hardware integration at MIT. So she's like at the forefront of having researched like all kinds of tools and how this is going to implement and how it's going to change the way we build hardware. So if people are interested in this particular topic, I will be releasing an episode next week on it.
Thanks.
That's perfect timing. So just to wrap up this amazing discussion, I wanted to I'll start with you, Alan. It's hard to do in a sentence, but what would your single piece of advice be for future hardware founders preparing to build that next wave of innovation?
I always say, don't do it. Don't go for hardware startups. But that's a joke. I mean, well, maybe raise funds early and constantly. So be sure that you have enough money and have a reliable team. So these two things are everything, actually.
Yeah, fantastic. Max, would you like to go next? And then Sarah and Susan.
Yeah, I can add on the topic, make sure you have money. Maybe if you're a startup, a hardware startup in Europe or especially in Germany, I would definitely take the time to really look on the grant offerings. And maybe if Alan and his team will do great work, it will be way more easier. But right now, you just need to invest the time to get the grants and to get the first funding. Yeah.
Right.
Over to you, Sarah.
Do you want to go ahead? Oh, me? Okay. Well, I'll say the opposite of what Alan said. Please build hardware. We need physical solutions for the physical world. And if you're scared, there are actually a decent amount of resources when you look into it. But one piece of advice that I would give is slow down to speed up. And I feel like what that essentially means is that hardware and just general startups can get pretty reactive. And obviously there's like a place for that. There are parts of your company and product that you need to go fast. But also it's okay to be proactive in some instances, just like Max said, where it's like when you're looking into your capital stack, if you take maybe a week, you might be able to find a grant that's going to not dilute you. So there are these strategic moments where slowing down to speed up is very important. And I just want to create space for hardware startups. That's okay to do. And you should advocate for that, because instead of making permanent decisions in the short term through just stress and fear, it'll help you kind of invest in your long-term vision.
Yeah, so I would like to encourage you to start a hardware business if you have not yet done it. And if you have started, define what is your problem, what is the problem you want to solve. And also maybe going back to Eric Ries, the Lean Startup book, define your hypothesis, think of your client's perspective and then build quickly your digital MVP. Really think of your product and, build it, show it to your investors, to your future customers, and test out your MVP. And if you want, you might also want to take a look at our offerings, which is, of course, Siemens for Startups, Solid Edge for Startups. And, we offer the program 1 year for free. Please reach out to me. I'm currently in Helsinki at Slush, so you might be able to meet me even in person in Helsinki, but also via LinkedIn. And so this would be my advice. And I really enjoyed the conversation with all of you. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Well, I'll wrap up quickly. Thank you so much, everybody, for your insights from very different perspectives, but also that kind of underlying thing that I took from it really. The quote that from Sarah, that the physical world needs physical solutions, because we talk about AI and these untouchable things all the time, and it's actually kind of refreshing to think about hardware and every part of our lives that it touches, and also the courage that it takes to build a hardware startup. It's not easy, and you're charting your own course. So I wanted to thank you all so much, and I'll pass now to Shengul, our marketing manager at StartupBlink. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone, for joining, to our panelists, for being here and sharing their insights, and of course to Susan and the rest of the Siemens for Startups team, as they have been really great partners here in releasing this report and also bringing up this panel. Thank you to all of you. If you would like to download the report, we will email you after the event with the link. And if you have specifically any comments or any questions about the panel, feel free to email us. Our team will drop the contact details. And yes, they did. So feedback@startupblink.com. Feel free to contact us. And if you need to be contacted, someone from panel, we will make sure to contact you. So thank you all for joining.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.